Welcome to the Economy Unpacked Daily YouTube channel. From Wall Street to your street, we share the world of money in a clear way. Today, we're unpacking a crisis that's not just about individual bank accounts, but about the future of our economy. Student debt. It's no longer just a personal burden. It's a generational economic force reshaping life choices for millions. Across the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia, outstanding student loan balances have ballooned into the trillions. More young people than ever before are carrying these loans into their 30s and 40s, delaying major life milestones. This isn't just data on a spreadsheet. It's the recent graduate in London choosing between paying rent or their student loan installment. It's the couple in Toronto whose dream of buying their first home is pushed back years by staggering repayments. This situation isn't accidental. It's the direct result of decades of policy shifts, market incentives, and huge macroeconomic changes. The consequences are interconnected, affecting everything from housing markets and fertility rates to entrepreneurship and mental health. So, how did we get here? Who profits from this system, and what realistic fixes actually exist? To understand the crisis, we have to look at how a university education, once a ticket to the middle class, became so unaffordable. The primary driver in many Western countries has been a steady decline in public funding. As governments reduced per-student state subsidies for higher education, universities had to make up the shortfall. The most direct way to do that, raising tuition and fees, shifting the financial burden directly onto students and their families. Simultaneously, universities began to operate more like businesses in a competitive marketplace. They now compete for students, top rankings, wealthy donors, and lucrative research grants. This marketization encourages massive spending on state-of-the-art facilities, aggressive marketing campaigns, and glossy branding, rather than on containing costs for students. This created an amenities arms race. To attract the best and brightest, institutions invested in luxury dorms, gourmet dining halls, and sprawling athletic centers. While these perks look great on a campus tour, they dramatically increase institutional costs, which are then passed on through higher tuition. At the same time, we've seen a phenomenon known as credential inflation. As more jobs list a bachelor's degree as a preferred or even required qualification, the demand for higher education has soared. With a captive audience, universities can raise their prices knowing that demand will remain strong. And behind the scenes, a growing legion of non-teaching staff in admissions, compliance, and student services adds to the administrative overhead costs that tuition ultimately helps to cover. These small policy shifts and market pressures have rippled into massive price hikes over decades. This created the perfect environment for an entire industry to form around the business of student loans. When you take out a loan, it's not just a simple transaction between you and your university. A complex web of lenders, servicers, and sometimes investors are positioned to profit. Whether the loans are public or private, loan servicers and collection agencies extract fees or earn interest over the long and often arduous repayment period. Even in public programs, private contractors can be hired to manage the loans, channeling significant profits to these intermediaries. The type of loan you get matters immensely. In the U.S., for example, federal loans often come with more flexible terms, like income-driven repayment plans and deferment options. Private loans, on the other hand, typically have higher variable interest rates and far fewer protections for the borrower, creating a two-tiered system with vastly unequal outcomes. The real trap for many is compound interest. For many students, interest begins to accrue while they're still in school or during periods of deferment. This interest can then be capitalized, meaning it's added to the principal balance of the loan. This can cause the loan balance to grow even when you're making payments, extending repayment timelines by years or even decades. A simple $20,000 loan can easily balloon into a $40,000 or $50,000 debt over its lifetime. This system is particularly susceptible to predatory practices. For-profit colleges have been notoriously criticized for targeting vulnerable students with aggressive recruiting tactics, promising high-paying jobs while charging exorbitant tuition for degrees that may hold little value in the job market. This model not only increases the total volume of student debt, but also leads to higher rates of default, a burden that often falls back on taxpayers when federal loans are involved. Compounding this mountain of debt is the harsh economic reality that greets young people after graduation. One of the biggest challenges is wage stagnation. For many entry-level and even mid-career jobs, wage growth has simply not kept pace with inflation and the skyrocketing cost of living. A steady job no longer guarantees enough discretionary income to comfortably manage loan repayments alongside other essential expenses. The housing market crunch is another major pressure point. Soaring rents and impossibly high home prices eat up a huge portion of a graduate's income, leaving very little left for loan payments or saving for a down payment. This directly delays major life milestones and the ability to build wealth. Add to this the rise of the gig economy and precarious work. Short-term contracts, part-time roles, and freelance jobs mean less income stability and a lack of employer benefits, making it harder to handle financial shocks. This is how student debt begins to have a snowball effect on other life choices. Borrowers are forced to delay buying homes, starting families, or investing in their retirement. This isn't just an individual problem. It has aggregate economic consequences, leading to lower consumer spending and slower household formation. Unsurprisingly, the burden is not shared equally. Students from low-income families or marginalized backgrounds often have to borrow more, face higher risks of default, and have fewer family safety nets to fall back on, deepening existing inequalities. Beyond the numbers, we have to talk about the immense psychological toll. Carrying a 5- or 6-figure debt for decades can produce chronic stress and anxiety. The constant worry about money can affect sleep, concentration, and even job performance. This leads to what psychologists call decision fatigue. The endless mental calculations, which bills to pay this month, whether to delay a necessary purchase, erode your mental bandwidth. This can also limit career risk-taking. A graduate with massive debt is less likely to start their own business or take a lower-paying job in a field they're passionate about. There's also a deep-seated stigma around debt, which can lead to shame and social withdrawal. Many people are reluctant to discuss their financial struggles, which prevents them from seeking help or negotiating better repayment terms. Over the long term, this prolonged financial stress is linked to higher rates of depression and other poor health outcomes, which in turn create their own economic costs for society. The student loan crisis is not the same everywhere. Different countries have taken vastly different approaches. In the United States, the system is a complex mix of large-scale federal loan programs and a significant private loan market. While income-driven repayment plans exist, access and implementation can be inconsistent, and the path to loan forgiveness is often politically charged and difficult to navigate. Australia, by contrast, uses the HEC S-Help system. Here, The government pays tuition up front, and graduates repay the loan through the tax system only once their income reaches a certain threshold. This income-contingent model significantly reduces upfront costs and default rates, tying repayment directly to one's ability to pay. In the United Kingdom, a similar income-contingent system is used where repayments are deducted automatically from paychecks. However, high tuition fees and changing interest rate policies have made it a subject of intense political debate. The debt is also written off after a set period, usually 30 or 40 years. Canada offers a hybrid model with a mix of federal and provincial loans. Tuition levels and repayment terms vary widely across provinces, creating a patchwork of different systems within one country. What these comparisons show is that repayment design matters. Income-contingent systems tend to reduce immediate hardship, but they come with trade-offs, like potentially higher lifetime payments for high earners. The key takeaway is that policy choices create different outcomes. Given the scale of the problem in countries like the U.S., one proposed solution dominates the conversation: student loan forgiveness. Proponents argue it would provide immediate economic relief, freeing up borrowers' cash flow for consumption, saving, and investment. It could also help close wealth gaps, as debt disproportionately burdens low-income and minority borrowers. However, critics raise serious concerns about fairness and cost. They ask, who pays for it? Is it fair to those who have already paid off their loans or who never went to college? There are also fears of moral hazard, that widespread forgiveness could encourage reckless borrowing in the future. A more targeted approach, offering relief to the most vulnerable borrowers, might be a more efficient and politically viable solution. Looking to the future, there are a few plausible trajectories. The most likely path is one of incremental reform, more countries expanding income-driven repayment plans, offering more targeted grants, and implementing some tuition controls without a radical overhaul. A more radical vision pushed by some political movements is a complete restructuring toward free or near-free higher education, funded by higher taxes. At the same time, we could see market-driven divergence, where the rising popularity of apprenticeships and online micro-credentials reduces demand for expensive traditional degrees. Which future do you think is most likely? So, while we advocate for systemic change, what can you do right now? First, build your financial literacy. Before you sign any loan agreement, understand the terms, interest rates, and repayment options. Second, choose your educational path with a return on investment in mind, balancing your passion with the practical realities of the job market. Third, maximize every opportunity for grants and scholarships. Finally, consider alternatives to a traditional four-year degree, like community college or vocational training, which can offer a direct path to a good career with far less debt. The student debt crisis is the direct result of decades of policy choices, market incentives, and economic trends. But because it was created by choices, it can be undone by better ones. The path forward requires holding our institutions accountable, demanding smarter policies from our leaders, and empowering ourselves with financial knowledge. The problem is complex, but it is not unsolvable. It will take public attention and political will to ensure that education is once again a ladder of opportunity, not a ball and chain. What are your thoughts on the student debt crisis? Share your story or your ideas for a solution in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Next week, we'll be doing a deep dive into income-driven repayment plans. Thanks for watching.